Stan checked his watch for the 16th time. His irritated grumbles kept under his breath as he stooped over the porch railing. The rickety wood under his arm was cold, the late breeze beginning to blow through the trees with a noticeable rustle. His yard remained empty. No sign of anyone besides the occasional woodland creature or freak of nature passing by. His already non-existent patient was wearing incredibly thin. For much of the night, Stan had tossed and turned in contemplation of outright denying the twins' arrival. He wasn't ready. His place wasn't ready. How the hell was he supposed to feed 2 extra mouths and keep the kids from accidentally impaling themselves on something? They did that often, didn't they? Wendy had offered to help, sticking thick blocks of wood between cabinet handles. Her family's version of baby-proofing locks. Stan hid away anything possibly dangerous onto the highest shelves, reaching it by sitting on Susha's shoulders. He'd permanently borrowed food from the residents in the town, telling them he'd be donating it to charity. It was going to orphans, Stan reasoned, but he still couldn't shake off the menacing feeling that what he was doing was stupid. He found himself too many times standing by the phone, preparing to turn those kids away, and he would have had they not been twins. Twins. Something so dumb and nothing more than some random genetic occurrence that was keeping him up at night. Often, he wondered if the worrying of such was because of him and his own twin. Other times, he worried over how to care for 2 kids who looked the same without painting their names on their foreheads. He was left alone with his thoughts, waiting for the inevitability of that car to come driving up his driveway. But as time passed, as the space remained empty, more and more thoughts passed through that made him feel exhausted just from standing there. He heard the front door open, then slam shut, 2 pairs of feet shuffling in his direction. Stan resisted making any indication he'd noticed, tilting his 4th soda can to his lips.
"The 2 of ya can go home. I ain't keeping ya here."
That's a first. Wendy's snarky tone didn't help lift his spirits. "Don't mind us, Stan." Mr. Pines. Wendy quickly corrected herself, but he could practically hear her eye roll. "Don't worry, Sus and I just want to see the little runts. You know, if it's real."
"You think I'm making up sappy orphan stories for shits and giggles?"
Stan crunched another empty soda can between his callous hands, the sharp noise ringing out into the empty space before him. For a second, he wondered if he'd been duped, but he hastily switched to a different train of thought. "You would," Wendy shot back as nonchalantly as possible as Sus nervously stood by. "For charity or image, I don't know. I'm just wondering if I ought to be wasting my time being excited over this."
"I oughta fire you,"
Stan snapped, throwing the can out into a plain of dead grass he called his lawn. There was a heavy silence that loomed like the dark clouds above. Wendy waited, Sus shifted behind her, and idly stated something about rain. "I don't care," Wendy huffed. But Stan was surprised to hear the unexpected emotion in her voice. He kept his expression stoic. "Kids can be cute, I guess, and if they really are foster kids, well, Sus and I were talking and we figured it'd be nice to help. Being these kids probably barely get that help, but we just wanted to know this wasn't fake."
"It's not,"
Stan perked, but the faint sound he caught was nothing but a stray bird. He slumped down again. "I'm not saying I'm expecting a cop-out," Wendy insisted before pausing for thought. "Actually, no, I am. But if this is real, it's honestly really cool, Mr. Pines. And we're here to help you so you're not alone, because God forbid you be alone with children. But we—"
"Shush!"
Stan threw back a hand, narrowly missing Wendy's nose. Startled, she moved back. Zeus's hand clamping onto her shoulder to steady her. Yeesh, if you wanted me to shut up, you just gotta ask.
No! Hush!
Silent, still as statues, the trio stood in place and waited. A bird chirped in the distance. Something gave a ferocious faraway growl somewhere deep in the woods. The wind rolled through the trees like it periodically did day and night. Bemused, Wendy quirked a brow in Stan's direction.
Sorry.
Gruffly, Stan apologizing became a sad lump against the railing again, folding his arms underneath him.
Thought I heard something.
Wendy gave a thumbs up before raising her eyes to Zeus, who only shrugged in response. Just saying, I'm not in charge of messes. We've got Zeus for that. I bought 2 new mops for this special occasion, Zeus informed, giving a subtle and formal head nod.
That's great, Zeus.
Abruptly, Stan shifted to Wendy, grabbing his cane in a swift motion and pointing the end directly towards her.
And you ought to quit running that mouth.
Wendy glowered, reaching up a slender hand and batting the cane away. Don't point that at me. I'm just saying, you tend to pull these stupid stunts that...
Like hell I'm gonna do that to orphans!
Stan turned his back on her, displaying nothing but a coldness he hadn't quite displayed before.
I'm not heartless.
You can be, Wendy countered as Zeus backed away a few steps at the sight of an impending argument. You've stolen stuff from kids before, and I can barely give a shit about them, but you do anything to orphans and I'll change my mind.
I've barely got enough patience left not to fire you where you stand.
For what? It's not like I'm doing something illegal here. Wendy's nose wrinkled, her sharp look barely a match for Stan's foreboding glare. Don't scold me just because I point out something you tend to do. Come yell at me if I ever tag up this trash of a home or steal your damn
car,
Zeus declared. Read my mind, Zeus, Wendy announced, not taking her eyes from Stan's. The businessman was visibly deflating, stepping away from his employee. I'm not gonna back down when I know I've got a right to be
No! Car!
Zeus gestured wildly towards the lawn, to where a dark vehicle came to a grating halt in the cloud of dust.
They're here,
Stan breathlessly noted, his eyes wide as Wendy moved towards a railing to take a closer look. The social workers stepped out first. Stan immediately recognized the young woman juggling a set of files. The man, a tall, lanky gentleman with combed dark red hair, gave a short wave in Stan's direction before stepping around and heading for the back door. There was a moment of hesitation, what sounded like a furious conversation delivered in short, angry bursts, before a head of brown hair popped out. A young girl, no older than 11 or 12, stepped uneasily out of the car like a baby deer. She wore nothing considerably fancy other than a dingy hoodie and a faded skirt. Her bulky sneakers were falling apart, a big toe visible in a pink sock. Chocolate-covered wavy hair swung over her face for a split second before she reached up and pushed it back with a frayed headband. Stan was frozen. As the girl locked dark brown eyes with him, a sense of intense fear so blatant, he wondered why the workers hadn't commented on it. Her fingers curled as she lowered her hands, her mouth gaping open ever so slightly, and he wondered if she was planning to say anything. But instead, she tore her gaze away and looked to the worker for help. Her lips moved in a desperate pace, the distance muting her words, but he could barely pick out brother amongst the babbling. After a second, the worker relented, reaching into the car and coming out holding a small boy's hand. The child looked groggy, and the girl seemed to barely hold enough restraint to keep from hurling herself at her brother. The boy had the same facial features, the chocolate brown hair that curled up at the nape of his neck, and an almost identical dark hoodie. Along with his faded jeans, one of his pant legs was rolled up, revealing a stark white of a bandage underneath. Almost instantly, the kids latched hands. The boy warily lifted his head, eyes blinking slowly as if still trying to register his surroundings. Suddenly, the faint glimmer of fear was gone, replaced by a predatory hatred Stan would have reserved for the lowliest of scum. Somehow, the boy held a better death glare than Stan had ever seen, even in prison. The sister had given nothing but a tentative touch of introduction, but the boy didn't back down. The only word arising from such behavior was hostility. Thankfully, Stan had dealt with something of it before. The worker snapped at the children, pointing to the car. The boy reached back into the back seat, removing 2 dingy duffel bags and quietly handing one to his sister. She slung it over her shoulder as she propped her brother against her, and he limped alongside her as they approached the porch. They followed the caseworker up to the house, the girl clutching her brother's hand as they walked at a steady, slow, and nearly wary rate. "Good afternoon, Stanford," the red-headed caseworker greeted as if it were a casual Saturday, lifting a hand up to his forehead like a makeshift salute. Stan didn't return the gesture. The man offered a strained smile before sweeping his hand towards the children. "We brought you our bundles of sunshine. Meet Dipper and Mabel." They were definitely twins. Identical height, nearly identical build, and an identical doe-eyed look. Dipper, Stan presumed the boy to be, had his expression seem to flicker from terrified to looking for blood. It was mildly unsettling.
Didn't think they'd be boy and girl twins,
Stan commented, the children suddenly interested at the sound of his voice. "Does it matter?" The worker glanced at the twins as if searching for a random deformity. "They're typically coercive. Whatever one wants, the other wants the same."
Frankly, I've gotta figure the both of them out.
Stan studied the twins for a second, before shooing Wendy and Seuss aside to get into the house.
Alright, come on in, and watch your step.